Okay, so we'll get started here. I wanted to share a document. So we're going to go back to the website that we looked at last time around. So this is the official spellings of common Heisler words on the Heisler Hybrid Orthography website. So I've been doing a lot of tinkering with the website. So quite a few things have changed about the layout here. I created this site a couple of years ago and didn't really do a lot with it at first. And then I tried to go back to it and something went wrong. So I basically had to reset the website and I lost a lot of what I had on there already. So I had to do a lot of rebuilding, but it allowed me to kind of start over from scratch and reorganize things and add more things to it. So I think this is a very helpful feature of the website. The official spellings of common Heisler words. So there's a note here on the top. I think I'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see it better. So when you look at some of the dictionaries from the past, you might see a word followed by the letters GL. So if you're not familiar with that, GL basically stands for Gitlop or Kitlop, Kamano. So that means it comes from the Hanaxiala Kiala dialect. So there's two separate dialects. There's Hanaxiala Kiala, which is basically like the southern dialect that was spoken in the Kitlop Kamano region. So it's the abbreviation is GL, and then there's GM, which is basically Gitmat, and this is the Heisler dialect. So the dialect that's spoken here around the Kitimat area. So essentially, Hanaxiala is the southern dialect, and Heisler is the northern dialect. So if you've ever wondered what these abbreviations stand for, that's basically what they mean. Is GL stands for Gitlop, GM stands for Gitmat. So everything on this website is spelled accordingly to the Heisler hybrid orthography. So that's one of the problems that we've had, is that all of the materials that were developed in the past were spelt according to whichever linguist was working with the language at that time. They all had their own spelling systems that they used. So there's it's kind of inconsistent going from one linguist to another one, because they all have different spelling systems that they used. So everything that's on this website is in one spelling, and that's the Heisler hybrid orthography, which, as I talked about last time, is an amalgamation of one of Emma Bach's orthographies and Lincoln and Rath. I also, something that's different about what I do with the language, I spell things according to lenition. So basically, lenition is the softening of certain sounds at the end of words or syllables. So this is very unique to the Heisler language. I haven't seen this very much in other languages. But basically, if you look up the word Liedzoch in a dictionary, like Emma Bach's dictionary, you'll notice that it is spelled with a KW at the end. So if you're not familiar with the way that he spelled Heisler words, you might say Liedzoch, but this is the linguistic spelling, but it's actually pronounced with a rounded X at the end. So it's Liedzoch, as opposed to Liedzoch. So the reason that, actually, I think I'm going to step away from the website just for a second here, and I'll do a demonstration of the differences between the spelling and the pronunciation. So I'll open up my Word document here. And looking for my cursor. Okay. So I'm going to paste the word Liedzoch as you would see it in Emma Bach's dictionary or Lincoln and Rath or in Heinvink. So I'm going to change the font here to Times New Roman. So basically, Liedzoch is what we would call an underlying spelling. So what happens here is that when this word is used by itself, you're going to have to change the last sound. So you're not going to say Liedzoch if you're just using this word by itself in isolation. Depending on the context, it might stay the same or it might change. So some situations where it would stay the same is if you add a suffix, and the suffixes will create changes in certain situations. So you kind of have to know the properties of each suffix that you're adding. So if I wanted to talk about a bowl of Liedzoch, but it's over, let's say I'm in the kitchen, or let's say I'm in the dining room and the Liedzoch is in the kitchen. It's not close to me. I would add a suffix like ache, and that would mean the salmon soup away from me. So it would be Liedzoch. So in this situation, this KW stays the same. But if you're just using the word Liedzoch by itself and nothing is attached to it and nothing comes after it, you would have to change this K. And I talked a little bit about how sounds are related last week. So this rounded K is in kind of like a family. Oops, I pressed the wrong button there. It's like a sound family, basically. So there's only certain sounds that you would be able to replace it with. So there is, so there's what we call a rounded K. There's also a rounded G. Actually, let's put the G in front here. There's also a rounded K with an apostrophe on top. And there's also a rounded X. So since Liedzoch, with the linguistic spellings, ends with this rounded K, it can only be replaced with one of these other letters. So since we're replacing the rounded K, that leaves us three options. What happens with lenition is that it basically softens the sound. So if we look at this GW, it wouldn't really fit here because of the sound that it makes. We can't really say Liedzoch. So we can eliminate the rounded G. And this ejective rounded K wouldn't fit because then it would be Liedzoch. So that's not the right sound. So it leaves us with this X, this rounded X. So it's kind of a process of elimination. So we've gone through the possible sounds that it could be replaced with. And we end up with Liedzoch. So this is the word used in isolation. So there's no suffixes attached. It's not being connected to any other words. no connection to other words. So this would basically be, in linguistic terms, this would be called surface level pronunciation. So this is when we use the word in isolation. That's when the surface level pronunciation comes. So in order for you to read this word, if you read it like this, then you would have to know that it has to change when you use it in isolation. But people who are just starting to learn the Haida language are likely not to know that rule, and they've probably never heard of lenition before. So I'm not counting on them being able to understand that and make that that change at the end of the word. Sometimes it happens at the end of a word, but most often it'll happen at the end of a word. Sometimes it'll happen at the end of a syllable. And I can't really think of any examples off the top of my head. I can't think of one, but it isn't actually lenition. It is a little bit different. But say let's use the word ohsuli. And this is Devil's Club. So it's spelt with this rounded X bar. That's the way you'll see it when it's in Emma Bach's dictionary or some other linguist's dictionary. But when you actually pronounce it, it's kind of the same idea. This rounded X bar is in a group of other letters. So I have to change this. I don't know why Word likes to capitalize letters all the time, but you have a rounded G bar as a possibility. You have a regular rounded Q. You have an ejective rounded Q. And then you have a rounded X bar. So we can't replace the sound with itself. So we're taking that away. We can't use this rounded G bar because then it would be oguzuli. And that's not the right pronunciation. We can't use this ejective rounded Q because then it would change the sound of the word. It would become okusuli, okusuli. And that's not the right sound. So that leaves this rounded Q, regular rounded Q. So this is a bit of a different process where it's actually kind of hardening the sound instead of softening it. But when you listen to fluent speakers, you'll hear them say, o kusuli, o kusuli. So it's kind of a harder sound. And you see it comes in the middle of the word. But this is the way you will see it spelled in Emma Bach's dictionary. You'll see it spelled with this rounded X bar. And like you can say it like that. You can say, oh, suli. Oh, suli. But it's a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit difficult to go from this sound to a s sound. It's easier when you have this rounded Q because there's kind of a stop built into it where you go ok and then suli, oksuli. So it flows better. It's easier to pronounce oksuli as opposed to ohsuli. So this is the surface level representation or the pronunciation. as opposed to the underlying. Representation. So these are some of the changes that will happen. And it has to do with word structure. So the linguists would write them this way to basically to preserve the word structure. But it does get to be a little bit confusing when you're trying to explain to people that, like, this is the way it's spelled, but this is the way it's pronounced. So this is the linguistic spelling. This is the actual pronunciation. So there's a difference between them. And instead of me expecting people to know these things, I spell them according to the sound changes. I make the changes for everybody so that they don't have to do that themselves. So hopefully that makes things a little bit easier for people and makes it a little bit easier to understand. So this is what I mean when spellings account for lenition or other sound changes. So I will spell liedzoch with the rounded X at the end as opposed to the rounded K. So this comes down to pronounced sound versus linguistic spelling. So we looked at this word last week, aloch. If you look this up in Emmons-Bach's dictionary, you'll see a rounded K. You'll see a K and then a small raised W at the end. But instead of me expecting people to know that you have to change the sound at the end, I just change it for them. So for me, that's a better way. So you look at this, you know it's pronounced aloch, and you don't have to make any changes to it, unless you're adding suffixes and other things to it or connecting it to other words. So aloch is a chief's spokesperson. I wanted to look at some other words here. So last week we looked at the name of the totem pole that went to Sweden. That was taken from the Kitlope territory and then sent to Sweden, where it spent a number of decades before we got it back from them. So the word is gapskolach. And the literal meaning of this is basically like the man or the chief of mountain goat fat. And that's basically the name of the pole. It was named after the chief that commissioned the pole. So it's named after him. So I wanted to do a couple of things here. I'm going to go back to my Word document. And we'll take a look at the word structure. So I'm just going to paste this into my Word document. Oops. So I don't think I actually copied that. So I'll do that again and then paste it. Okay, so the way this works is in terms of the first word, there's two parts to this word. So this gup is what refers to like a person, a man, or a chief. So that's basically the word in isolation. This is essentially what we call a root word. And when we add this S, it's actually a shortened form of the word haste. Haste means by or of or about. It's essentially a connector. It connects one word to another one. But in this situation, what's happening is that we're taking away the first two letters and we're reducing it down to the last letter, which is an S. So this is basically like adding haste, but taking away the first two letters and then adding it to gup. So gup kind of means like man. So gup means man. And then the suffix, the s, means of. So gups means man of. And then this golach, this means mountain goat fat. So when I put these together, you have gup, which is man. We're adding an S to it, so then gups becomes man of. And this S also connects gup to golach. So when we say gup golach, what it really means is like man of mountain goat fat. So the gup is kind of almost like, you think of English, it's almost like saying Mr. or like sir, something along those lines. It's a term you use to refer to somebody when you're speaking to them, essentially, is what that means. So gupskolach, in the most literal sense, means man of mountain goat fat. And this golach, it doesn't come from isla. I believe it comes from either the Coast Simshan dialect, Samalgyach. Not 100% sure about that. It might be from Gitsan, their dialect, or Nishka. I'm not really sure exactly. I know it comes from a different dialect other than ours, but I would have to check on that. It might be spelled or pronounced a little bit differently. This is basically like the highest version of that word. So it originates from a different language. But when a language gets brought into Haisla, when it gets adopted, the sounds usually get changed because of the way our language works. So I'm not sure exactly where Golach comes from, but that's my understanding, is that it comes from one of our northern neighbors. So let's look at the word structure of Gupskolach. And I want to show you something in terms of the pronunciation. So I have a program that I use called Audacity, and it's an audio recording program. So I often hear different pronunciations of Gupskolach, and some of them are not very accurate. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to record myself saying it inaccurately, and then I'll record myself saying it with the accurate pronunciation. And then I'll show you an analysis of those pronunciations. So I'm going to hit record, and then I'll say both of them, and we'll take a look. Okay, so here we go. Gupskolachs. Gupskolach. Okay, so I'm going to enlarge this a little bit so you can see better. And I'll zoom in a little bit more too. So this is the inaccurate pronunciation. This is the accurate pronunciation. So if you look, the first part, this is gups. They look pretty similar. If we zoom in a little bit more, we can kind of see how this visualization works. So when you're dealing with digital audio, this is a waveform. So this is a visual representation of the sound that I just recorded. So basically, when you see these waves, when they're kind of narrower, that means that they're quieter. When they're taller, that means they're louder. When the vibrations are closer together, that means that I'm not sure how to explain it. It's probably a higher pitched sound. And when they're further apart, it's a lower pitched sound. So we're seeing visual representations of sound here. So this is gups. So if I play this, you should hear gup, gup. This is probably this is the S sound. That was very fast. So if I select both of them, so this is probably the S here, this part here. Gup, maybe a little bit more. Gups. Now you hear the S coming in. So this whole thing is the S, now that I'm hearing it. And a little bit of the P too, hearing ps. So if we look at the second word, the second part, this is where I intentionally mispronounced it. So you should hear Golocks. So I'll play that and then we'll hear it. So I'm missing a little bit of the end part. So I'll highlight a little bit more. So this is probably the X sound. Yeah, Golocks. So that's an inaccurate pronunciation. And then if we look at the accurate pronunciation, if I zoom out, maybe I'll remove this space in the middle here so we get them closer together. So this is Golocks, which is the improper pronunciation. This is Golach. So you can see there's a big difference between this and this. So if I play this, then you'll hear the proper pronunciation. Golach. So these waveforms give you a good visual representation of the sounds. But you can go a step further. One of the things I really like about Audacity is that you can look at waveforms, or you can change the wave into what we call a spectrogram. So this is a little bit different. It's a different representation of the sounds. So if I zoom in here, what's happening is that you're seeing on this vertical axis, you're seeing numbers on the side. These are hertz. So hertz is basically a measurement of vibrations. So the higher this goes, the higher the pitch of the sound. So lower sounds are going to be down here. Higher sounds are going to be up there. So down here we have 100 hertz, 240, 400, 1,000, and so on. So basically the higher up you're going, the higher the pitch of the sound you're looking at. And then on the vertical axis, we're seeing time. So, or on the horizontal axis, I should say. So vertical, we're seeing pitch. Horizontal, we're seeing time. And then you see that some of these parts are really bright, like a really bright yellow, almost white. That shows intensity. That shows how intense the sound is. So we're looking at different representations, a different representation of this, this sound. So if I play this, this is the first one, which is the inaccurate spelling. So I'll play that. Golocks. So in the Golocks part, especially the locks, this, you can see it gets really bright towards here, around 5,000 hertz. That represents that X sound. So it's a very high sound. well, it's almost a hissing sound, golux, whereas this is the go. So it's a lower sound, a much lower sound. Here we have gup, gup, which is a lower sound, and then s. You can see it's higher. And gup is lower, s is higher. Goal is lower, ox is higher. Golux. I'm gonna take another listen to the golux part, and we'll play that again. Golux. So I think this part is the L sound, ol. And then there's a little bit of a stop before we go into ox. So that is the improper pronunciation. This is the proper pronunciation. So you see a big difference in the last part. So we'll play that last part. Golach. So there's a little bit of a difference here, because in the improper pronunciation, I'm saying go, like in the English word go. But the proper pronunciation is more like go, golux, golach, go. So go is different than go. So we're seeing a difference here in the visual representation in the spectrogram. We're also not really seeing a gap. We're not seeing a stop between the first part of the word and the last part. And this last part is the sound. So we'll play that very quickly. So if we look at them side by side, you definitely see a difference. The first part looks fairly similar. Another thing that I'm noticing is this go is shorter because we're looking at time going across the horizontal plane. So this is go, this is go. So it's a longer sound, a little bit longer. And then we're seeing a big difference. There's a gap here between the first part of the word and the last part. This one, we're seeing more of a flow between the two separate parts of the word, the two different syllables. So that is a really good representation of the sounds, the pronunciation. So I'll play them both together and you'll see and hear the difference. So that's what I wanted to share today. Hopefully that is helpful. And this is the reason why I place so much importance on having a spelling that accurately represents the sounds, because you can really see the difference between an inaccurate spelling and an accurate or inaccurate pronunciation and an accurate pronunciation. And it all comes down to the spelling. And that's one of the biggest benefits of the isla hybrid orthography, is that accurate spelling leads to accurate pronunciation. And once you learn to associate the sounds with the spellings and become more familiar with that, it'll really help you with your pronunciation and you'll sound more like a fluent speaker. So I hope that is helpful. And if you have any questions, I'm totally open to anything that you have to ask or any comments that you have.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I appreciate you sharing all that. I was just reading, and then I have the PDF of his um, collection of words, and I was just reading about the suffixes and how to change words. I feel like it's so much to understand, but the way that they laid out Baguenum and Baguas and the other word for discussion, and how like the root word of people or person, and then you can add things on to make it something different. Like, I just think that's so interesting, and yeah, I feel like it ties in with what you're talking about today. Like, I would really love to learn more about all of that and like how to decipher words and how to say them properly. I still find the some of them really hard to say. Like, it's yeah, it's hard to understand.
Mhm. Um, Next week, what I can do is I can use that example that you just gave and dissect that a little bit more. We can explore it together.
Yeah, that would be cool. Oh, I think I might not be able to make it next week.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't make it next Thursday, but the week after. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things that I study about the language, and it's really helped me in my understanding. So having a standard writing system has really helped me uh, develop accurate pronunciation, and also studying the word structure has helped me in terms of understanding how the language works in general. Because once you get a better understanding of how words are built, that will help you with sentence structure down the road. And I find that it's really helpful to uh, like study small parts of the language and just kind of build up from there. So like studying the sounds, which are the smallest part of the language, and then exploring how words are built, looking at the word structure. Once you get a better idea of how that works, then you can look at sentence structure. So you're kind of building your base of understanding from like the smallest parts of the language and then slowly kind of building into more um, kind of involved parts of the language. So I find that's really helpful, and it's it's been a big help for my language journey and where I am in my understanding of the language.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'd love to learn. It's hard to just read things online and try to figure it out.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm really thankful for these sessions. I find it really helpful.
Okay, thanks. So that's it for today's class. So thank you for being here, and I'll say escuelas,
Okay, escuelas.
or I actually mispronounced that escuelas,
Escuelas.
escuelas.
Escuelas. Okay, thank
Well,
you.